Imagine this. You're standing in a shadowed room, a mirror before you, its surface rippling like liquid obsidian. Reflected, there is not just your face, but a kaleidoscope of unseen selves, parts of you that whisper truths you've long ignored. One figure steps forward, eyes wide with feeling, heart porous to the world's pain, the empath. Across the glass, another emerges, cloaked in grandiosity, gaze fixed on its own brilliance. The narcissist. These two, entwined in the dance of human connection, are not strangers, but archetypes born from the same fractured root. What would you see if you peered deeper into that mirror? Would you dare to face the shadow where the empath's quiet wounds feed the narcissist's insatiable hunger? In the Jungian landscape of the psyche, the empath and the narcissist are not mere personality types, but archetypal forces, each carrying a shard of the collective unconscious. The empath, with their porous boundaries, absorbs the world's sorrow as if it were their own. They are the healer, the listener, the one who feels the unspoken tremors of another's soul. Yet within their depth lies a shadow, a hidden wound that mistakes self-sacrifice for love that equates worth with how much they can carry for others. This shadow, unacknowledged, becomes a magnet for the narcissist, whose own unconscious hungers for validation, for a mirror to reflect their constructed grandeur. The narcissist, in turn, carries their own shadow, a fragile core, a child abandoned by authentic connection, cloaked in a persona of invincibility. Together, they form a dyad, a psychological pas de deux, where each projects onto the other what they cannot face within. Consider the empath's gaze soft yet burdened as they offer their heart to the narcissist's polished exterior. They see in the narcissist not just a person, but a canvas for their own unspoken need to save, to heal, to be needed. This is no mere act of kindness. It is a transaction of the unconscious. The empath's shadow whispers that their worth lies in dissolving themselves into another's pain, that love is a ledger of self-erasure. And the narcissist, sensing this offering, drinks deeply, not out of malice, but from a primal need to fill the void where their own self-worth should reside. The narcissist's charm, their radiant confidence, is a mask for a deeper fragility, a fear that without external adoration they cease to exist. In this dance, the empath's shadow becomes the narcissist's plaything, a tool to sustain the illusion of omnipotence. But pause for a moment. Look within yourself. Have you ever felt the pull to save someone, to pour your essence into their emptiness only to find yourself drained? Or perhaps you've craved the spotlight, the affirmation of others, to drown out a quiet voice that questions your enoughness. These are not accidents, but echoes of the archetypes at play. Jung taught that the shadow is not evil, but the repository of all. We refuse to see our fears, our shame, our unmet desires. For the empath, the shadow is the refusal to claim their own boundaries, the belief that love demands martyrdom. For the narcissist, it is the terror of vulnerability, the dread that beneath their curated self lies nothing of substance. Both are bound by projection, each seeing in the other what they cannot bear to acknowledge in themselves. This dynamic is not confined to individuals, but ripples through the collective unconscious, a pattern as old as humanity. The empath's need to heal mirrors the narcissist's need to be seen, and in this mirror, both are trapped. The empath projects their unclaimed strength onto the narcissist's apparent power, while the narcissist projects their unacknowledged fragility onto the empath's open heart. This is the alchemy of the unconscious, where opposites collide to reveal a deeper truth. Neither can be whole until they face what lies hidden. Individuation. Jung's path to wholeness demands that each confront their shadow, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. For the empath, it is the courage to say no, to honor their own needs as sacred. For the narcissist, it is the humility to embrace vulnerability, to seek connection rather than control. The dance of the empath and narcissist is not a curse, but a call to awakening. It is a mirror held up to the soul asking you, what do you see? What part of you longs to be saved, and what part demands to be seen? The interplay of these archetypes is a map to the self, a guide through the labyrinth of the psyche. To step out of this dance is to begin the work of shadow integration to reclaim the fragments of self that have been projected onto others. It is to stand before that rippling mirror and see not just the empath or the narcissist, but the whole complex contradictory beauty of who you are. The mirror of the psyche ripples still its surface, a restless tide pulling at the edges of awareness. The empath and the narcissist, locked in their eternal dance, move through the shadows of the collective unconscious, each step a revelation of what lies buried. The empath, with their heart tuned to the frequencies of others' pain, often forgets the melody of their own soul. They pour themselves outward, believing that love is a currency of self-denial, that to feel deeply is to owe the world their very essence. Yet in this act of giving, they unwittingly feed the narcissist's hunger, a hunger that is not for them, but for the reflection they provide. The narcissist, cloaked in the illusion of self-sufficiency, stands as a monument to their own unacknowledged wounds, their charm a brittle shield against the void within. This interplay is not a simple transaction, but a labyrinth of projections where each archetype sees in the other a distorted echo of their own shadow. The empath's shadow, heavy with unspoken resentment, clings to the belief that their worth is measured by how much they can endure. They become the martyr, their boundaries porous as mist dissolving into the narcissist's demands. And you, what of your own boundaries? Have you ever felt the quiet ache of giving too much, of losing yourself in the act of saving another? That ache is the shadow speaking not in condemnation, but in a plea for recognition. It asks you to see the part of you that equates love with sacrifice, that fears claiming your own space will render you unworthy of connection. The narcissist, too, is not free from this entanglement. Their shadow is a fragile thing, a whisper of doubt beneath the grandiosity. They seek the empath's gaze not for love, but for affirmation, for a mirror to reflect the self they cannot face. Their charm, their control, their relentless need to be seen, these are not signs of strength, but of a deeper terror, that without the adoration of others, they are nothing. Their unconscious plaything is the empath's willingness to reflect back their constructed brilliance, yet this reflection is a lie, a distortion that keeps both trapped. The narcissist's shadow begs for vulnerability, for the courage to dismantle the persona and stand naked in their humanity. And have you ever chased the approval of others to silence a quiet fear that you are not enough? That chase is the shadow's call, urging you to turn inward, to face the fragility you've hidden behind a mask of confidence. In the Jungian framework, this dance is a crucible for individuation, the process of becoming whole by embracing all that we are: light and shadow, strength and wound. The empath must learn to see their self-sacrifice not as love, but as a refusal to claim their own power. To integrate their shadow is to set boundaries, to say, "I am enough," without needing to save you. This is no small act. It is a rebellion against the collective unconscious's pull toward codependency, a reclaiming of the self from the altar of others' needs. For the narcissist, individuation demands a descent into vulnerability, a willingness to let the mask crack and reveal the trembling child within. To face their shadow is to seek connection over control, to find worth not in external mirrors, but in the quiet truth of their own being. This dynamic, though deeply personal, is also universal, woven into the fabric of human relationships. The collective unconscious carries the archetypes of the empath and the narcissist as ancient patterns replayed across generations. The mother who gives until she is empty, the leader who demands loyalty to mask their insecurity, the friend who listens but never speaks their own truth. These are the faces of the dance. Yet within this repetition lies the potential for transformation. Jung believed that the shadow, when faced, becomes a guide to wholeness. The empath and the narcissist, though seemingly opposed, are two sides of the same coin, each holding a key to the other's liberation. By confronting their shadows, they disrupt the cycle of projection, stepping out of the mirror and into authenticity. Look closer now. What do you see in the relationships that shape your life? Where do you give too much or take without giving? The empath and the narcissist live within you, not as labels, but as energies, as tendencies to lose yourself in others, or to demand others lose themselves in you. The path to integration is not to banish these archetypes, but to understand them, to hold them in compassionate awareness. It is to ask, what am I avoiding in myself that I seek in another? The answer lies not in judgment, but in curiosity, in the willingness to stand before the mirror and see all that you are wounded, radiant, and whole. The mirror of the psyche trembles its surface, a restless sea where the empath and narcissist circle one another, their shadows entwined like vines in a forgotten garden. This dance is not merely a clash of personalities, but a profound interplay of the unconscious, where each archetype feeds the other's hidden wounds. The empath, with their heart open like a wound, seeks to heal the world as a way to avoid their own pain. Their shadow whispers that to feel is to fix, that their value lies in absorbing the chaos of others. Yet in this act of absorption, they lose themselves, their boundaries dissolving into the narcissist's endless need. The narcissist, meanwhile, stands as a fortress of self, their grandiosity, a fragile defense against the terror of insignificance. Their shadow is the unspoken fear that without the gaze of others, they are nothing, a void cloaked in charisma. This dynamic is a projection of the unlived self. The empath projects their unclaimed strength onto the narcissist's apparent power, seeing in their confidence a wholeness they feel they lack. The narcissist in turn projects their vulnerability onto the empath's open heart, using their empathy as a mirror to reflect their constructed greatness. But what happens when you peer into this mirror? Have you ever felt the pull to fix someone's brokenness, only to realize you were trying to mend something in yourself? Or perhaps you've sought applause to drown out the silence of self-doubt, only to find it never fills the void. These are the moments when the shadow speaks not to condemn, but to beckon you toward wholeness. In Jung's vision, the shadow is not an enemy, but a teacher, a repository of all that has been denied. For the empath, the shadow holds their unacknowledged anger, their suppressed need for selfhood. To integrate this shadow is to learn the sacred art of refusal, to say, I will not lose myself to save you. It is to recognize that true compassion begins with self-compassion, that boundaries are not walls, but bridges to authentic connection. For the narcissist, the shadow cradles their hidden fragility, the part of them that longs to be seen without pretense. To face this shadow is to dismantle the persona, to risk vulnerability in a world that feels unsafe. It is to seek love, not as a trophy, but as a shared truth, a mutual unveiling of the self. This process of shadow work is the heart of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. It is not a solitary path, but one that unfolds in relationship, for the empath and narcissist are not just within us, but between us. Every interaction is a mirror, reflecting back the parts of ourselves we've yet to claim. The empath who learns to set boundaries discovers a strength that does not diminish their compassion, but deepens it. The narcissist who embraces vulnerability finds a connection that does not depend on control, but on mutual recognition. And you, what mirrors do you face in your daily life? Who in your world reflects back the parts of you that you've buried? The colleague who demands your time, the partner who craves your validation. These are not random encounters, but invitations to see yourself more clearly. The collective unconscious hums with these archetypes, their patterns etched into the stories we tell, the roles we play. The empath and narcissist are not just individuals, but energies that flow through families, workplaces, cultures. The mother who sacrifices her dreams for her children, the leader who builds empires to escape their doubts. These are the empath and narcissist at work, their shadows shaping the world. Yet within this repetition lies the potential for awakening. Jung believed that by facing the shadow, we reclaim the energy trapped in projection, transforming it into a force for growth. The empath who honors their own needs becomes a beacon of authentic care, not a martyr to others' pain. The narcissist who risks vulnerability becomes a catalyst for true connection, not a collector of empty praise. Step closer to the mirror now. What do you see in the faces around you? What do they stir in the depths of your soul? The dance of the empath and narcissist is a call to courage to confront the parts of yourself you've cast onto others. It is a call to stop running from the shadow and to embrace it as a guide. The empath's gift is not their ability to feel, but their capacity to choose who and what deserves their heart. The narcissist's strength is not their charisma, but their potential to love without needing to be loved first. In this alchemy of the psyche, both are invited to step out of the dance and into a new way of being, one that honors the self as much as the other. The mirror of the psyche pulses its surface alive with the currents of unspoken truths. The empath and narcissist, bound in their intricate dance, move through the shadows of the unconscious, each step a collision of longing and denial. The empath, with their soul woven into the fabric of others' pain, believes their purpose lies in carrying what others cannot. Their shadow, heavy with unvoiced resentment, clings to the illusion that love is a one-way offering, that to exist is to dissolve into another's needs. Across this divide, the narcissist stands, their polished exterior, a fortress against the fragility they cannot name. Their shadow is a quiet terror, a fear that without the mirror of others' adoration, they are but a hollow echo. In this interplay, the empath's shadow becomes the narcissist's unconscious plaything, and the narcissist's shadow fuels the empath's endless giving. This dance is not a mere entanglement, but a revelation of the psyche's hidden architecture. The empath, in their compulsion to heal, projects their own unclaimed power onto the narcissist's apparent strength, seeing in their confidence a wholeness they feel they lack. The narcissist, in turn, projects their buried vulnerability onto the empath's open heart, using their compassion as a stage for their performance of grandeur. But pause and look within. Have you ever poured yourself into someone hoping to fill their voids, only to find your own emptiness reflected back? Or have you sought the spotlight, craving validation, to silence a whisper of doubt? These are the shadow's whispers, urging you to see what you've cast onto others, to reclaim the parts of yourself you've given away. Jung's shadow work is not a punishment, but a pilgrimage, a journey into the depths where the denied self waits. For the empath, the shadow holds their suppressed anger, their right to exist without serving others. To integrate this shadow is to draw a line in the sand, to say, "My heart is not a currency. My worth is not your salvation." It is to recognize that true empathy does not erase the self, but strengthens it, that boundaries are acts of love for both self and other. For the narcissist, the shadow cradles their unacknowledged need for connection, the part of them that aches to be seen without a mask. To face this shadow is to let the persona crack, to stand vulnerable in a world that feels like a stage. It is to seek love not as a reflection, but as a shared unveiling, a mutual recognition of humanity. This path of individuation unfolds not in isolation, but in the crucible of relationship. The empath and narcissist meet in others. Friends, lovers, colleagues, each encounter a mirror, reflecting back the shadow. The empath, who learns to say no, discovers a compassion that is not martyrdom, but empowerment, a gift that honors both giver and receiver. The narcissist, who risks vulnerability, finds a connection that does not demand performance, but invites authenticity, a bond rooted in truth rather than illusion. And you, what do you see in the mirrors of your life? Who stirs the parts of you that you've buried? The friend who leans too heavily, the partner who demands your applause. These are not accidents, but invitations to face your shadow, to integrate the self you've projected onto them. The collective unconscious thrums with these archetypes, their patterns woven into the tapestry of human history. The empath and narcissist are not just personal forces, but cultural ones, shaping myths, families, societies. The caregiver who forgets themselves, the leader who craves worship. These are the empath and narcissist, playing out their shadows on a larger stage. Yet within this repetition lies the seed of transformation. Jung taught that the shadow, when embraced, becomes a source of vitality, a wellspring of energy reclaimed from projection. The empath who claims their boundaries becomes a healer, not of others' wounds, but of their own, radiating a compassion that is whole. The narcissist who embraces vulnerability becomes a leader not of ego, but of heart-forging connections that endure beyond the spotlight. Step into the mirror now. What do you see in the eyes that meet yours? What truths do they ask you to face? The dance of the empath and narcissist is a call to awaken, to stop seeking in others what you refuse to see in yourself. It is a call to stand before the shadow and embrace its lessons, not with fear, but with curiosity, not with shame, but with courage. The empath's power lies not in their giving, but in their choosing, in the wisdom to offer their heart without losing it. The narcissist's strength lies not in their image, but in their humanity, in the bravery to be seen as they are. In this alchemy, both are invited to step out of the dance and into a new story, one of wholeness, authenticity, and love that begins within. The mirror of the psyche shimmers its depths, a restless tide where the empath and narcissist weave their intricate dance, each movement a brushstroke on the canvas of the unconscious. The empath, with their heart, a vessel for the world's unspoken sorrows, believes their purpose is to absorb, to mend, to make whole what is broken. Their shadow, heavy with unclaimed rage and buried needs, whispers that love is a ledger of sacrifice, that their existence is validated only by how much they can give. Across this chasm, the narcissist stands, their polished facade, a shield against the void they dare not name. Their shadow is a fragile pulse, a fear that without the mirror of others' adoration, they dissolve into nothingness. In this interplay, the empath's shadow becomes the narcissist's unconscious plaything, a tool to sustain their illusion, while the narcissist's shadow fuels the empath's endless offering. This dance is a hall of mirrors, each reflection a projection of the self's denied truths. The empath sees in the narcissist's confidence a strength they feel they lack, projecting their own unclaimed power onto this glittering facade. The narcissist in turn sees in the empath's open heart a stage for their grandeur, projecting their vulnerability onto this willing mirror. But stop for a moment. Look into your own heart. Have you ever given until you were empty, hoping to earn love through your sacrifice? Or have you sought the gaze of others to silence a quiet fear that you are not enough? These are the shadow's whispers, not accusations, but invitations to see what you've cast onto others, to reclaim the fragments of yourself you've surrendered. Jung's path of individuation is a descent into this hall of mirrors, a journey to face the shadow, not as a foe, but as a guide. For the empath, the shadow holds their suppressed voice, their right to exist without serving as another's savior. To integrate this shadow is to draw a boundary, to say, I am whole, without needing to fix you. It is to understand that true empathy does not demand self-erasure, but flows from a wellspring of self-love. For the narcissist, the shadow cradles their unacknowledged longing for authentic connection, the part of them that aches to be seen without pretense. To face this shadow is to let the mask fall, to risk being human in a world that feels like a stage. It is to seek love, not as a reflection of their greatness, but as a shared truth, a mutual unveiling of the soul. This work unfolds in the crucible of relationship, where every encounter is a mirror reflecting back the shadow. The empath who learns to honor their own needs discovers a compassion that is not a burden, but a gift, a strength that uplifts without depleting. The narcissist who embraces vulnerability finds a connection that does not rely on control, but on courage, a bond that endures beyond the need for applause. And you, what mirrors do you face in your life? Who reflects back the parts of you that you've buried? The friend who demands your time? The lover who craves your validation? These are not mere interactions, but calls to awaken, to integrate the self you've projected onto them. The collective unconscious hums with these archetypes, their patterns etched into the stories of humanity. The empath and narcissist are not just personal forces, but universal ones, shaping families, communities, eras. The parent who gives until they break, the leader who builds empires to mask their doubts, These are the empath and narcissist at play, their shadows shaping the world. Yet within this cycle lies the potential for transformation. Jung believed that the shadow, when faced, becomes a source of power, a reservoir of energy, reclaimed from projection. The empath who claims their boundaries becomes a healer of their own soul, radiating a compassion that is authentic and whole. The narcissist, who risks vulnerability, becomes a catalyst for connection, forging bonds that are rooted in truth rather than illusion. Step closer to the mirror now. What do you see in the eyes that meet yours? What truths do they ask you to claim? The dance of the empath and narcissist is a call to courage to confront the parts of yourself you've cast onto others. It is a call to stop seeking in the world what you refuse to see within. The empath's gift is not their sacrifice, but their discernment, their ability to love without losing themselves. The narcissist's strength is not their image, but their humanity, their capacity to connect without needing to dominate. In this alchemy of the psyche, both are invited to step out of the dance and into a new way of being, one that honors the self as much as the other one, that weaves the shadow into the light of wholeness. The mirror of the psyche gleams its surface, a restless sea where the empath and narcissist dance, their shadows entwined like threads in a tapestry of the unconscious. The empath, with their soul, a conduit for the world's unvoiced pain, believes their worth lies in their capacity to carry, to heal, to dissolve into the needs of others. Their shadow, laden with unspoken fury and neglected desires, clings to the myth that love demands self-annihilation, that their existence is justified only by how much they can bear. Across this divide, the narcissist stands, their polished exterior a fortress against the fragility they cannot face. Their shadow is a trembling whisper, a dread that without the mirror of others' praise they are but a fading echo. In this intricate dance, the empath's shadow becomes the narcissist's unconscious plaything, sustaining their illusion of grandeur, while the narcissist's shadow fuels the empath's endless giving. This interplay is a labyrinth of projections, each archetype seeing in the other a reflection of their denied self. The empath projects their unclaimed strength onto the narcissist's apparent power, mistaking their charisma for wholeness. The narcissist projects their buried vulnerability onto the empath's open heart, using their compassion as a stage for their performance. But pause now. Look within. Have you ever poured your heart into someone hoping to mend their brokenness, only to find your own wounds bleeding? Or have you chased the approval of others to drown out a quiet fear of being unseen? These are the shadow's calls, not judgments, but invitations to reclaim what you've cast onto others, to embrace the parts of yourself you've exiled. Jung's path of individuation is a journey through this labyrinth, a pilgrimage to meet the shadow as a teacher, not an enemy. For the empath, the shadow holds their suppressed voice, their right to exist without serving as another's savior. To integrate this shadow is to draw a sacred boundary to say, "My heart is not your salvation. My worth is my own." It is to recognize that true empathy flows from self-love, that boundaries are not barriers, but acts of reverence for the self. For the narcissist, the shadow cradles their longing for authentic connection, the part of them that aches to be seen without a mask. To face this shadow is to let the persona crack, to stand vulnerable in a world that feels like a stage. It is to seek love not as a mirror, but as a shared truth, a mutual unveiling of the soul. This journey unfolds in the crucible of relationship, where every encounter is a mirror reflecting the shadow. The empath who learns to honor their own needs discovers a compassion that is not martyrdom, but empowerment, a gift that uplifts without draining. The narcissist who embraces vulnerability finds a connection that does not demand performance, but invites authenticity, a bond rooted in mutual recognition. And you, what mirrors do you face? Who in your life reflects the parts of you that you've buried? The friend who leans too heavily, the partner who craves your applause. These are not chance meetings, but calls to awaken to integrate the self you've projected onto them. The collective unconscious pulses with these archetypes, their patterns woven into the fabric of human existence. The empath and narcissist are not just personal energies, but universal forces shaping myths, families, societies. The caregiver who forgets themselves, the leader who demands worship. These are the empath and narcissist at work, their shadows casting long ripples. Yet within this repetition lies the seed of transformation. Jung taught that the shadow, when embraced, becomes a wellspring of vitality, a source of energy reclaimed from projection. The empath who claims their boundaries becomes a healer of their own soul, radiating a compassion that is whole. The narcissist who risks vulnerability becomes a catalyst for true connection, forging bonds that endure beyond the spotlight. Step into the mirror now. What do you see in the eyes that meet yours? What truths do they ask you to claim? The dance of the empath and narcissist is a call to courage to confront the parts of yourself you've cast onto others. It is a call to stop seeking in the world what you refuse to see within. The empath's gift is their discernment, their ability to love without losing themselves. The narcissist's strength is their humanity, their capacity to connect without needing to dominate. In this alchemy of the psyche, both are invited to step out of the dance and into a new story, one of wholeness, authenticity, and love that begins within. The individual who truly understands their depths extends that grace to the world. End.